Good evening. I thought that I would video through YouTube a book that I am really taken with. It's by a young man called Adam Vickerstaff, and it's called All for Socks. So I hope that the sound recording is good. If not, you'll just have to buy it anyway. It's on Amazon, and you can get it on Kindle via Amazon as well. It's for children, and it's just wonderful. So I'm sitting on a bed, and I'm going to read it to you, just the first chapter, because that wouldn't be fair. So, All for Socks, A Lots of Things Story by Adam R. Vickerstaff. On the page. And it's dedicated for all those who believed and wondered where odd socks go to, or socks in general. I think I have 200 odd socks and a son who used to get called Odd Sock. So chapter 1 is to fix it. And just put the picture of the room. A boy called Thomas. Yes, stay. The words spread through the mist of the dream, slicing it in two. Thomas opened his eyes. The room was dark, except for a strip of light cast from the slightly open door. He could hear his mother arguing on the phone. No doubt with Dad. They always argued, even now, so far away from home. He pictured an army marching across the ceiling, descending the shelving, scaling the books and videos, carrying the flag to claim this land. They had moved here a few weeks before, once his mother had found a job away from Dad. She said it would be more fun here, a better life, but it wasn't. No one spoke to him at the new school, and his only enjoyment was watching the trains pass by during class. He ate school lunch by himself, attended the classes, and then went home for tea. Mum would ask how the day went, and he would lie, telling her that he had met a new friend that day, that they had played football, and everything was fine. Then he would climb the stairs of doom, slowly ascending using a piece of string tied to a hanger as a grapple, until he gained access to an impenetrable fortress at the top, leaving the door slightly ajar just in case. You never knew what evil might be lurking in the darkened corners. He picked up his toy sheriff and imagined the desert spread across his bed, and every night at 7 the phone would ring, Mother would answer, and the arguing would begin. A new home, a new life in a new town. The army climbed down to the third shelf. The flag shuffled from soldier to soldier to the head of the column as they all. He closed his eyes again and rolled to face the window. The arguing grew louder. No doubt the phone would soon be thumped down, and Mum would storm upstairs and slam her door. He waited. He had not told her about the teddy his father had given him before they left. He dared not speak to her of something that might remind her of Dad. He'd carried the teddy everywhere with him over the past few weeks, apart from when he was at school, of course. His sidekick in his elevation to the impenetrable fortress and adventurer across the bleak desert of the bed. They had searched everywhere, but it was lost. He especially did not want to tell her about the socks. He just did not know where they were going. He had searched everywhere, yet they were nowhere to be found. There were but a few odd socks and one full pair left now, and he had positioned them carefully in the centre of the floor in a small heap so that he could keep an eye on them from his bed. He fixed his gaze on them now. A solitary pair of socks left alone, and watched in the middle of his room. He heard the ticks of the clock and his breathing as he watched, his eyes peeking through a small gap in his quilt, keeping himself wrapped up, more for protection than warmth. The noise from below grew increasingly louder as the shouting became more intense. The clock's tick seemed to grow louder with the noise from below. The clock's hand struck one. Then nothing. Thomas waited. Still nothing. There was no noise from downstairs, no noise from anywhere, as if time had just given up, and all that could be heard was Thomas's breath and his heart pounding. Thump, 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 thump. Suddenly a sound erupted around the room, like 1,000 crickets chirping from under the bed. Darkness spread from the veil, a blanket covering everything from the bed outward, and, as it did, the sound of crickets grew and grew. Thomas crawled to the edge of the mattress, eyes wide with fright, his heart thumping louder and louder, almost but not quite muffling that sound. Thump, thump. Moving even closer to the side of the mattress, he slowly turned to see what was causing the strange noise. Why wasn't his mother running up the stairs? Why couldn't he hear her voice, the clock's ticks, anything other than his loud heartbeat and the crickets? The hanging sheet of the bed moved, a breeze drifting over it. As the darkness spread across the floor, he moved carefully, so as not to make any noise, creeping towards the edge. Every second his heartbeat was another inch. Slowly he crept onwards to gain a peek at the ghostly presence across his floor. As he finally reached the border of the mattress, the darkness had spread to the centre of the room, and a hand of pure black formed at its peak, opened its grasp to touch the sock mound, grabbed the last full pair of socks and pulled them back under the bed. Thomas was transfixed with terror as the darkness withdrew towards the gap between the blanket and the floor. Suddenly the clock ticked again, and his mother's voice, louder than the crickets, louder than his own racing heart, could be heard, shouting into the phone downstairs. Well, a new home, a new life, in a new town. He would fix it, all of it. The phone slammed down. Thomas rolled off the bed before the shroud of darkness fully disappeared, and for one brief moment looked at the mound of socks. Turning to face the retreating darkness, he panicked at what his mum would think. She began to climb the stairs. He stood staring at the retreating darkness, hands clenching and unclenching, heart beating faster and faster. His mum reached the last step. He dived at the veil as the last of the darkness withdrew under the bed, trying to grasp the disappearing socks skimming on the wooden floor and hurling himself under the bed head first. The sheet drifted over his scalp as Thomas rolled, crashing into a huge box. He stood, brushed off the dirt that had stuck to his pajamas, felt the bump on his head where he'd hit his box. Then he froze. As far as he could see, gigantic, old, discarded toys stuck out at precarious angles, with clothes hangers and building blocks piled up almost to the beams. The box that Thomas had banged into was at least 5 times his own size, and appeared to be an old jack-in-the-box, which he had pushed under the bed shortly after moving. A screw lying just in front of him was almost half his own size. Directly ahead of him was a giant metal container, too high for him to climb, with a strange black slime all the way up. And to his right, a pile of books was stacked up into the distance above. The hallway light illuminated the surrounding area through the bedsheet, casting a pale light. Blue light. Overhead, fog and clouds formed near the beams. He was small, very small. Turning, he considered crawling back through the veil to climb out, yet the socks called him. He would fix it. He turned back, and finding a small crawlway under the CD cases, he squeezed through on his hands and knees, climbing over old puzzle blocks to find himself in a more open area. Some distance away, the last socks were being pulled over the top of a pile of blocks by the strange dark apparition, leaving a black trail of flame behind. There was no way to follow or to catch up to the dark creature, since there was no way for him to climb after it. Directly ahead, the puzzle blocks, was the sheer cliff of the container that Thomas could not scale. With a ruler balancing precariously on top, he looked sadly at the wall of metal. It was his secret box, where he kept all his precious things he did not let his mum or anyone else see. Like a thank you card from his mum when he bought her the model car he had saved up for. Precious things now turned into a giant wall, impossible to climb. He looked around the area. There were some old screws, nuts and coins littering the floorboards. A CD was tipped on its side against a discarded deodorant can, and for a moment he thought he saw movement in it, only to realise it was his reflection. He walked towards the CD and stared in bewilderment as he took himself in. He was 2 centimetres tall, but still Thomas, still 9 years old, with his brown and red striped pyjamas, brown slip-on slippers, brown eyes, and dark, messy hair. He was covered with dust, though. Mum would be angry. He again brushed off the dust as best he could, and shaking his hair to dislodge any bits. Through the CD's reflection, he caught a glimpse of something behind him. It was on top of a stack of CDs and moving in the shadows. As he turned in surprise, a voice came from the darkness. I waited long for the boy from above to come. To my wake came you, as the old wise one told. The voice broke the silence like a crack. Thomas was momentarily startled. A strange creature walked out of the gloom and bowed. Through the shadows, Thomas could see what appeared to be a stooped old man wearing a long robe and carrying a cane. Hello? Thomas hesitated, confused and shocked by the creature's presence. Introductions, first he thought. Always be polite, Thomas. The creature pointed in the direction of the lost socks, so beckoning Thomas onwards. It's too high. Thomas pointed at the wall blocking his path. The creature moved out of the shadow, and Thomas finally managed to get a clear look in its appearance. It was hunched slightly, thin, with almost transparent pink skin, shriveled with age, and with eyes that seemed far too large for its head, which was bald, with one giant ear hung down its back, which Thomas at first mistook for a long robe. It carried a cane made from what could only be an old matchstick, and on its back were small pieces of wood created from matchsticks and other things, tied together to form a rickety ladder. It stood motionless for a moment, inspecting the metal wall and scratching its long grey beard with a 2-fingered hand. It half closed its right eye, thinking, an expression of sheer concentration on its face. Thomas half expected the creature's tongue to emerge to touch the side of its chin. That is, if it did have a tongue. Look, I was just, my socks, the thing, Thomas stammered. This was too much. Rather than worrying about being 2 centimetres tall and finding himself under a bed, Thomas was instead shocked by what this creature was doing under his bed. It was Thomas's bed, after all. There, on the floor of things, can be used to knock the ramp down. The creature pointed at the floor, then to the ruler dangling above as it spoke. Then you can use it to climb up. Thomas looked around. This was like being in a class at school, being singled out. He really disliked being singled out. Picking up a nut nearly quarter of his size, he threw it at the overhanging ruler. It missed completely. The creature sighed. Again, Thomas picked up the nut. and with all his strength threw it at the ruler, which wobbled before falling from its precarious position, one end landing on the floor while the other remained on top of the box. The creature clapped his hands. Thomas put his feet on the wobbling ruler and carefully climbed up the slippery surface. The creature waited patiently until Thomas arrived at the top, then spoke in a noble tone, moving his arms to show the importance of its speech. It was almost as if the creature was performing a fully rehearsed speech on stage. Thomas stood enthralled as it spoke. I have been long time waiting, but the old wise one, it gives things for the boy from above to use on journey, important and precious things. It moved its right hand under its large ear and pulled out a roll of paper, throwing it to Thomas, who caught it. That is old manuscript. Can guide you through above. It will remember where things are. Oh, I do with one of them. Thomas, caught in the moment, opened the parchment, and sure enough, written on the paper were pencil lines depicting the surrounding area. The rest was blank. Cleverest by nature, the creature muttered almost to itself. Reaching behind its neck, pulled over its head a necklace with a gleaming metal stick attached. It looked at Thomas and smiled. This is necklace of hope, it said with grandiose gesture. You use only when you completely lost, no way forward. It threw the metal necklace to Thomas, who caught it in the air. When Thomas looked at the necklace, he realized the thing dangling from it was quite bizarre. It was shiny, with prongs sticking out of it at various angles at the ends. Before Thomas could look further, the creature spoke again. And here, its left hand into its ear, is the book of memories, and it threw a small book to Thomas. Thomas snatched the book from the air, opened it near its middle, which was blank. He turned the pages back until he found where the writing began, just a few pages from the beginning. Writing appeared as he read, the words filling the pages as though they were being dictated. The book of memories remembers what was. Thomas turned to chapter 1 at the beginning of the book. Yes, stay. The words his mum had shouted just a short time before. He closed the book fast, put it in his pyjama pocket. It shocked him, the feeling that his life was being written. He could hear the book now in his pocket, etching his thoughts onto the page. He put the necklace on, then rolled up the manuscript and put that in his pyjama pocket. When he turned to thank the creature, found that it had disappeared back into the gloom. Wow. Chapter 2. Just as the old wise one foretold. To hear the rest, you'll have to buy the book, All for Socks, by Adam Vickerstaff, who's a very clever artist and writer. So I dedicate this to all my lovely young friends and nieces and nephews, for Ellie Mae, for Luke, for lots of lovely children, Huxley girls especially. Enjoy.